So in Navy boot camp, after you arrive and go through a few days of training, a few recruits are going to be selected either at random or because they show more potential to be in leadership positions. In the beginning, the RDCs are going to control absolutely everything, but over time they're slowly going to give more and more responsibility to these leadership positions until they eventually replace the role the RDCs filled at the beginning. The first one is going to be RPOC, or the Recruit Chief Petty Officer, and this is the recruit that's basically in charge of all of the recruits. This role is the most important one and is the most likely one to be promoted at the end of boot camp, meaning that since the RDCs have the ability to honor promote certain individuals in the division by the end of boot camp, this is the one that's most likely to be selected for that. In other words, if you're RPOC or one of these other leadership roles that we're about to go over, there's a pretty good chance that by the end of boot camp, the RDCs will say, you know what, you're someone that's already shown leadership qualities and needs to be promoted in boot camp to E2 or E3 if you are joining as an E1 or an E2, and you can be promoted early when you would otherwise have to wait 9 months to be promoted to E2 or 9 months to be promoted to E3. Anyways, the RPOC at the beginning of boot camp is going to be kind of like a protege to the RDCs, but as time goes on, they give more and more responsibility to the RPOC, and by the end of boot camp, the RPOC is expected to replace the role the RDCs filled at the beginning. The last few weeks of training, the RDCs are going to be hanging out in a little office that they hang out in called the fishbowl, which is like a little glass room that they can see the compartment through, and they expect only the RPOC to come and talk to them. If I go talk to them, if you go talk to them, and we're normal recruits, they're just going to slam the door and yell at you and be like, why are you in here? Go talk to RPOC, because the RPOC is expected to replace the RDCs by the end of boot camp. If any of the recruits have questions, they should go talk to RPOC and the other leaders that they raised instead of go talk to the RDCs directly like they did at the beginning of boot camp. After the RDCs start to back off and give more and more responsibility to the RPOC is going to be the person that actually gives out the commands of like where to march and calling out the row guards so that the division can cross the street. The RPOC is also going to learn how to use the cutlass and a couple of drills associated with it, which are going to be useful for graduation. The RPOC is also going to wear the Chief's gold-filed anchor to symbolically represent their role as the Recruit Chief Petty Officer. So next in line is AROC, or the Assistant Recruit Chief Petty Officer. AROC is kind of like the second in command of the division. They're going to fill in when the RPOC is away, and the main role that AROC fills is to be the cadence caller. So if you know how to sing, if you can sing beautifully, that person has like a strong voice. They're going to be calling out the cadences so that everybody can march in step, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and use the songs. And if people aren't in step, it's going to be a disaster. You'll have people stepping on each other's feet and tripping over each other. You have to keep everybody in step so that the division can march correctly. AROC is going to wear the first class petty officer rate on their collar or on their rank tab on their chest. It varies from division to division, but in my division it was on the little rank tab. And AROC is also, just like RPOC, very likely to be promoted. So next up is the division's yeoman, who is also going to wear the first class petty officer rate. The yeoman of the division is going to be constantly busy with all the paperwork and records of the division, and just speaking as a spectator, it seemed like a pretty stressful job. What was interesting is that the yeoman was the only person besides the RDCs that actually knew what was coming next in terms of scheduling, and they would kind of write it on the inside of the fishbowl on the little whiteboard in there. Besides the main yeoman, there was also the dental yeoman and the medical yeoman, and they had to do a bunch of like scheduling appointments and doing clerical work associated with that. The dental yeoman was very busy for a little while when the dental wave came over our division and everybody had all those appointments, but once it was all taken care of, the dental yeoman kind of fell into irrelevance. The medical yeoman was about the same. At first everybody had a bunch of appointments and stuff to take care of, but after even the stragglers were taken care of, it also kind of just fell into irrelevance. It's possible, but not anywhere near guaranteed, that these secondary yeoman positions are going to get honor promotions. The main yeoman is probably the person, if any, that's going to get it. Both the medical yeoman and the dental yeoman are going to have the third class petty officer rate on their chest or collar. Next up is the division's Master at Arms, which is nothing like what an actual Master at Arms does. But long story short, in boot camp, the MA's job is to try to quiet people down, usually with some pretty colorful language. The division's Master at Arms, just like the other leadership roles that recruits hold in boot camp, is not allowed to beat you, meaning make you do exercises like push-ups and jumping jacks and all that stuff. But what they can do is make you stand at attention or parade rest, and if you don't already know, you're not allowed to talk while standing in those positions. The division's Master at Arms is also going to wear the first class petty officer rate. Port watch and starboard watch are the next leadership roles. Port watch and starboard watch are going to be the next leadership roles. Starboard watch is going to make sure that the deck log is correct. It's like a little logbook that lists off every single thing that's happening. And the RDCs are going to be really upset if anything is wrong about it, even a comma, even a period. And because the recruits are writing in it, starboard watch was usually seen like hunched over it and watching it to make sure everything is put in correctly, because if it's not right, they're the one that's going to have to answer for it. Every single time the division does anything, including PT sessions and whatever, it'll be logged into the logbook, like now commencing laundry, and then like an hour later, secured from laundry. The starboard watch is also the person that sets up the watch bill. In other words, you have like the security watch and the rover constantly standing watch. They're the person that sets up the schedule for who's going to stand those posts and then who's going to relieve them. So at like 8 o'clock, these two people are going to come out. 10 o'clock, these two people are going to come out, and that's how that works. The watch of the compartment is going to be stood 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But if you're starboard watch or any of these other watch positions, you don't have to personally worry about the relief. The person that's currently standing it is usually just going to wake up the person, if they're sleeping, that's meant to relieve them because they're right there. On the other hand, the port watch is the person managing the watch of the actual ship, which is the building that you're staying in. The building you're living in is your ship, and the quarterdeck is kind of like the entrance and exit of the building where people walk in and out, like a reception area. There's going to be a few posts down there that the port watch is going to schedule people to stand, and that's how that works. Both the starboard watch and the port watch are also going to answer the RPOC when they yell out when they're marching, because they'll call out something like port watch section forward, and then they'll answer and repeat something back. It's not that important, but it is part of the job. The reason for it is when they call it out, it identifies part of the marching formation and instructs them on what to do. Both port watch and starboard watch are going to wear the first class petty officer rate. Next up are the section leaders, and these are recruits in charge of like a group of racks. So each rack is like one top bunk, one bottom bunk that you sleep in. Each one of those also opens up, and inside is all of your like uniforms and items, and everything in there is inspectable. It has to be folded a certain way and placed a certain way. It's the section leader's job to make sure that everything is placed correctly and folded correctly. A few times in boot camp, your compartment is going to be inspected, including while you're gone, and you can come back and all your stuff can be thrown all over the place. Laundry petty officer is the next one. It's a great job. It's an easy job. I made a whole video about it because it's what I was during the entirety of boot camp. I didn't want to take up too much time in this video talking about it, so it's a separate video. But long story short, I would recommend it. You're going to wear the second class petty officer rate on your chest or collar, but it's not likely to get promoted. The education petty officer is the next one. The EPO is the person that's going to be in charge of helping people learn the academic portions of boot camp. So throughout boot camp, you're going to be taking academic tests about various topics like firefighting and naval history and other things. And the EPO is going to help you study for those things with like pseudo classes where everybody sits on the floor around them and they read from the textbook together. It's going to help you a lot. That person is somewhat likely to be promoted. That person was promoted in my division, but it's not guaranteed, and they're going to wear the second class petty officer rate. At the beginning of boot camp, all of the physical training sessions, the PT sessions, are going to be handled by the RDCs, but later on they're going to pass that responsibility over to the athletic petty officer for them to take over, and they're going to back off. And the APO is going to have the same binder they had, which is going to show each exercise and how to properly do it and how many to do, and they're going to take over it for the rest of boot camp. And the APO is going to wear the second class petty officer rate. The religious petty officer's job is to make sure everybody gets to the religious service of their choice. RTC is going to provide services for more than 20 different religious groups, and it's their job to make sure that you're scheduled to go there and get there. There's also the male petty officer for the male services of boot camp. For dropping off mail for average recruits, it's easy. You just drop it into the box. They give you the address for the ship. But for picking it up, that's the male PO's job. They're going to wear a third class petty officer rate, and I don't think it's that difficult of a job. Not that likely to be promoted. The head PO is the person in charge of keeping the head clean, which is the bathroom and the showers. And it seems like a very difficult job that's kind of thankless. There's a lot of hits in there, including if there's water droplets in the sink, that's a hit. So we kept wiping it up with paper towels until our building ran out of paper towels. So they kind of loosened that rule up a bit. Maybe it'll be different for you. But head PO is not a very glamorous job, kind of a thankless job, a difficult job, probably not likely to be promoted. If you enjoy cleaning, if you want to find some satisfaction in cathartic work, then that's, it's all there for you. But I do not personally recommend it, but it's a job that has to be done by someone. Next up is the damage control petty officer, who I didn't really see do that much, but if anything is broken, if anything is a fire hazard, it's their job to report it. They're going to have a third-class petty officer rate, and I didn't see them get promoted. Next up is the forward hold petty officer, and that is also an inspection nightmare place because there's so much stuff on the shelf, all the cleaning supplies, and if anything is slightly off, if anything is missing or turned a little bit or anything like that, it's a hit on the whole compartment. So because of all of that, a lot of the cleaning supplies that is, like meant to be used in there actually just sat still because it's a lot less of a problem than if you try to use it and put it back and it's wrong. The forward hold PO had a third-class petty officer rate on their chest and was not promoted in my division. The last official leadership position of Navy boot camp is going to be the weapons petty officer, the person that's in charge of the clearing barrel in Navy boot camp. So after the gun range, the watchstanders of the compartment are going to receive like fake weapons to stand watch with on their belt in a holster. And it has to be done a certain way to download and upload the weapon. In other words, when someone is relieved from their watch, they're going to download the weapon, which means take the ammunition out, and the person taking over the watch is going to put the ammunition back in. It has to be done a certain way. That concludes the list of official positions, but there may be unofficial positions that do show up in reality, even though they don't exist on paper or by requirement, like people that take out the trash, people that handle the irons, people that handle the galley menu. We call them Yum Yum, like, hey, Yum Yum, what's for dinner? Stuff like that. When I was laundry PO, I had an unofficial laundry MA, somebody to watch over the room and make sure nobody just wandered in there and started touching all of our stuff and got us compartment hits. Because if something was off or missing or turned, like I said, it's going to be a hit when FQA comes, the quality inspectors. And that's not an official position. That's not something that the person was rewarded for necessarily. And in reality, they're not really worth talking about that much.